Welcome back to the Rad Lab podcast. We have a first recurring guest here, Dr. Kyle Murphy here at Tennessee Tech. And we kind of wanted to just touch base again and just see where we're at. Both of us, we started at the same time. He was one of my first podcast guests when I was getting this off the ground. And I just wanted to reconnect him so we could honestly just talk about how these first few years going through the tenure process, becoming a professor, and how it's kind of gone, and talk about some of the successes we've both had, and talk about some of the things we learned. And for just to, gas him up a little bit, Dr. Murphy has secured some NSF funding as of recent, right? If you would like to tell us what funding that was, that'd be great.
Yeah. So first off, I want to say, thanks for having me again. It's been really cool seeing the multitude of guests you've had on since we did our podcast together. So it's been cool seeing all these people that have come through, and we had some seminars on campus that these speakers came through to talk to the chemistry department and the university as a whole, and then they were also able to do your podcast. I think it's been a very fruitful collaboration, if you will. And I got to put D&D in my resume, right? On my media appearances on my resume, I can put Dungeons and Dragons because it's in the title.
Yep.
So I've hit a milestone with what I wanted to do with D&D. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the NSF funding I got is very much related to green chemistry. And it's a umbrella project, if you will, where I'm making these compounds called N-acyl hydrozones. So it's sort of this privileged scaffold, we call it in organic chemistry. That's a very specific functional group that has the potential to have antimicrobial properties or antibiotic properties, if you will. They can also be used for interesting synthetic chemistry in making these compounds called 1,3,4-oxidiazoles. So we can do an oxidative cyclization on them, and that has the potential of chemosensing capabilities through these compounds. And then we also are using them to see if we can depolymerize microplastics. So we're having some early success with that so far. So it's a umbrella project in making the N-acyl hydrozones, and then there's these three kind of shoot-off points that is really good for undergraduate students. So the grant is primarily for undergraduate students. It's through this solicitation called LEAPS, and it's primarily for faculty who are at R2 or PUI universities, like we are here at Tennessee Tech, which is a R2 at the moment. And the big thing with that is having funding for undergraduate students and then some funding for master's students in my group. And this just happened in August, which I don't want to say I was surprised to get it, but I was very happy to get it. There was a bit of a delay in the LEAPS program, which made me nervous it was going to get cut altogether, given the way this year has kind of gone for federal funding. And yeah, I was just very happy to get it, kind of surprised. This is the second time I've gotten an external grant. The first one was through the American Chemical Society, the Petroleum Research Fund. I was also surprised I got it. Not because I didn't think I had a good proposal, but sometimes these external grants are a little competitive. And I've had plenty of funding that didn't work out that, maybe we can touch on that later. But yeah, that's kind of where the NSF grant stands.
Yeah, and I think the NSF LEAPS program is a really good program. If you're listening to this looking for a program to try to apply and get some good money for, I think NSF LEAPS is a great opportunity, especially for undergrad, getting funding for undergrads, master's students, things like that, especially for the smaller universities. And I think you're being modest. I think you've been highly successful with acquiring grant funding. Mm-hmm. And so, to, I guess, try to help people out there, what's your thought process behind when you start applying for a grant like LEAPS or something like that?
So it is tough to say for sure what like a best practice would be. So what I tend to do is, and sometimes I find this out through actually paying attention to solicitations online, or like getting email recommendations, or there are a few big ones like the ACSPRF is, I would say, more well known in the early career community. But I actually got lucky with the NSF grant because one of the speakers that we had, I think it was late 2024, we had a seminar speaker come in, and I've been the seminar coordinator for the chemistry department for a couple of years. So I invite speakers to come in, or I did invite speakers to come in several times a semester, and they would come in and give a talk, and sometimes I would take them out to dinner afterwards. And this was a case where we had a alumni of Tennessee Tech recommend me to apply to the NSF LEAPS, which I'm very grateful to him for. And my process with that, once I know I'm going to apply for a grant, is as long as it's not, if it's like a month out, I'm probably not going to erode my mental health attempting to write a grant in a month, especially if it's like a big one. But if I can start off a few months in advance, what I like to do first is make the figures. I like to work on the figures first because and I would say this is probably my biggest tip for grant writing is you want to have nice figures, but you want figures that make sense for either a general audience or people in your field who may not necessarily understand your exact niche of research you're doing. And if you can make a all-encompassing figure and put it on the front page or the first page of the narrative, then I would say you have a better shot of grabbing the reader's attention right away. And if they see that figure and say, oh, I kind of get the project already, I already know looking at the first figure what the project is about, then they're going to have an easier time connecting the dots themselves later on. Because if you just have 2 pages of walls of text and then you start having figures, they may have already lost the plot a little bit. So having something right away to grab the attention of the reader is probably the most helpful thing. So that's my process, is I start putting the figures together, and then the text kind of comes later.
Yeah. Now that's interesting that you do it in that order, because I think I do it the opposite. I've been able to get some funding myself through DOE and Y12. I think the Y12 was definitely an unconventional way of doing it, but for the DOE grant, I think I don't know. I always start with the body of it in terms of like the research side and like really getting that down, working on the introduction. And then I go back and like, okay, a figure would really highlight this point, or a figure would really highlight this point. I feel like I can't make the figure until I know exactly what my narrative is. So it's interesting that you do the figures first and then do the writing. And I think with grant writing, there's no like magic bullet on how you're supposed to do it. But, whatever helps you process that information and make it coherent, that's the way you should do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's great.
Yeah.
I need to get better at trying to find more funding. I think I don't check the websites, don't check like all the different places to look for those grants as much as maybe I should. And so I think, you're giving me the fuel to try to do that more.
Yeah, and really just networking, talking to people, and it's not fun to talk to random people. It's not fun to talk to strangers at conferences, right? But that has probably helped me more than not in getting both of my grants, has been doing the uncomfortable Zoom call with the program or the program director of the grant you're applying for, or going to, if you're at a conference and somebody from this program is there, go and talk to them. I attribute my success to doing those 2 things. So I think that's been a very lucrative experience so far for me, and is doing those collaborative things.
Yeah, no, I think trying to get yourself out there, talking to different people, and that's been part of my success as well, is just putting myself out there. And it is hard to have those conversations with the random people and things like that, but I think it is ultimately helpful, because as much as the putting the seminar coordination on a new professor, as much as that seems like it's such a burden, which it can be at times, because it's a lot of work, but it helps you with networking so much, and that you'll need. And I know you want to shy away from it, and a lot of people do, just because it is a lot of work, and I'm guilty of that myself, but there are benefits to it if you do it correctly. Obviously, if you don't do it well, you're not going to get anything out of it. But if you do it like you've done and been very successful at, I think you can get a lot out of that experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is the other big tip too, is not just for finding grants to apply to, but for any students listening or any faculty listening or whoever's listening to this. If you have seminars going on in your department, or you have the ability to go to talks, go to them. You never know what ideas are going to form while you're at these seminars, and I've had ideas from the past few years of going to seminars that have made it into grants that have gotten funded. So I think you never know when you're going to get an idea or have made some sort of a connection when you're at one of these talks.
Right. No, I think that's great advice, and advice I need to take more. So, do you have any tips for how many grants you should be writing a year?
So I will start off by saying we are at an R2 university. So Tennessee Tech is not, we're not a big R1. This is not Yale or MIT or anything like that. So what I've done, and this is what I sort of aspired to do when I first started here, is apply to small grants first. And that's primarily what I did, is applied to a couple small external grants that were less than 20K. Oak Ridge Associated Universities does a small, like $10,000. It's called a PO grant. I applied to that twice, didn't get funded. Tennessee Tech, and depending where you are, at what university you are, you probably have internal grants. Apply to those, right? They may be smaller, but anything you can do to show, your university department, you're kind of committed to making sure you get funding is good. And any little bit helps, especially when you're applying to external grants. They probably want to see you have some sort of a backing, right? And that was sort of my process, is apply to small external grants first and then go for bigger ones later. So my first 2 years, I'd applied to a couple of internal things, a couple smaller external things, and the biggest grant I applied to was the American Chemical Society Petroleum Research Fund, the PRF. And I was lucky to get that. I was happy to get it, but I felt it was, I'm saying luck, but so it's not uncommon to apply for a grant. You have to apply to it multiple times, right? And getting that in my first 2 years was very nice because it gave me some relief and it gave me some positive reinforcement that, hey, like I can do this, like I can write this grant. And that might not always happen, right? So you have to kind of keep pushing if you don't get the grant for the first time. So I would say I had been applying to between external and internal grants probably 2 to 3 a year up until this year. And that is, some people might say that's a small number. If you're at an R1 university listening to this, you might be applying to more grants than that. Or maybe you're applying to less if you're at PUI and research is not a big focus. So it really depends on what you're doing. But I have found success so far in writing with the small grants. And then when I applied to bigger grants, I applied to 2 NSF grants. One of them I did not get. And the second one that I applied to, the NSF LEAPS, I did get. And I attribute that success to getting a smaller external grant first. And so that's been my path, and I think that's you can apply right away to the big grants. I think you could find success in that, but that has been my process, is starting off small and then applying to bigger things as I got more comfortable writing the bigger grants, which typically requires more effort, right? You have to write a larger narrative and have more sound scientific backing in your research and even have preliminary data.
Yeah, no, your process makes perfect sense. My process was I feel like my process was kind of the opposite again, where if we're talking about number of grants that I've written probably a far fewer than you've written. I think I wrote maybe 1.5 a year since we've started here.
Yeah.
And I didn't start with the small stuff. I did do a PO just because it was easy. It was like a 2-page thing, which maybe is kind of 2 pages can be hard or easy depending on how you look at
Absolutely,
it.
Yeah.
And that was the last small one I ever wrote because I just didn't get the feedback that I thought that I wanted and it was like a decent amount of work for almost like very little return in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I made the conscious decision. I'm just going to write one big grant a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I made that decision because I wanted to be able to put all my focus. Like I knew the grant cycle, especially for the DOE, and I knew what was going to come up because they come up every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I picked one, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this entire year to just focus on getting this one grant.
Mm-hmm.
And it allowed me to try to make that document as perfect as possible in my eyes, so that whatever feedback I get, I know this is real feedback, and this is not just because I missed a part or this part could have been better. I did the best I could. So all the feedback is real feedback on exactly where I need to improve. And that was my thought process behind it. The first DOE grant I wrote didn't get funded. They liked the narrative. It just wasn't the right fit for the institution. So that gave me confidence to use that same narrative for something else that was a better fit for what what we do here at Tennessee Tech, and that's what allowed me to get the next one.
Right.
And so I think that was that was my thought process behind the grants that I got. And like you say, once you get funding, it helps you. They like, okay, someone's risked that amount of money on them already.
Yes.
So, okay, it's a little bit safer of a bet. And which is a little bit crummy in a way, because you always want them to take a chance on new people.
Yes, of course.
But they have a job to do. They have their livelihoods on the line as well, so they need results as much as you do. And so I understand that thought process.
Right.
But it does hurt the newer faculty, I think, a little bit. And I was able to secure a contract with Y12, and I think having that contract and showing that amount of money that was committed to me through them, I think helped me get that DOE grant I ultimately did. So I agree with, I don't think I do things, I think, unorthodox in a lot of ways, and that's just how my brain worked, and I got lucky. I think I truly got lucky.
I mean, the other thing with it too is, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, is you don't know what things are going to happen until you start putting yourself out there, right? Networking,
Right.
talking to people, having uncomfortable conversations with people you don't know. And I think what it really comes down to is opportunities present themselves to those who are prepared, right? If you aren't looking for something, you're not going to find it, right? But if you are keeping your eyes out and you're putting in the work, you can start small, you can start big, you can, make the figures first, you can write the text first. I think no matter what you do, as long as you're doing something and moving forward, taking it, whatever to you is a small step at a time to reach the big goal, is going to be what helps you the most.
Right. Yeah, and I guess, one of the things to point out is it's all individual. Like everything can be done your way, as long as you do it to the best of your ability, I think, is the most important part. And I think that's great. Since we're talking about research or funding for research and things like that, we can pivot a little bit into what we've learned about the research process as a new faculty member. And it's almost like a homework assignment. And when we did out plenty of students where they never email me back, and I'm okay. Like if they're not willing to do this questionnaire and fill it out, I see how serious they were, or maybe it wasn't the right fit. But I've had students come back with a questionnaire and they tell me more about what they want to do, and I'm like, maybe you want to work with someone else. Like this is, these are your life goals. Like I don't know if I can help you get there. You might be able to go with someone else that can help you get there, with their connections and their network that may help you further down the road. But like you said, I think any research is going to help any student, I think, down the road, if they do it well, if they do it properly, if they get that experience. And I think the biggest thing that, students learn from research is how to fail. Because when we get students, most of them have never failed in their life.
Yeah.
And, they run a reaction expecting it to work. We run reactions with no expectation of it's going to work. And it's almost just like, it's a icing on top if it works.
Sure, yeah.
But they have this preconceived notion that everything is going to work. And so I had master's students, who they tried their first experiment and literally got depressed because it didn't work.
Yeah.
When it didn't work, they turned to me and one of them actually said, "This didn't work. I've never had anything not work." And I'm like, well, welcome to science. It's like 99% failing, and that 1% is what you see in these papers and stuff like that. It's almost like Instagram, where you only see happy things.
Oh sure.
Right, but you don't see all the failure that it took to get to that point. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest thing, is or one of the biggest things students can learn.
Yeah, it's an important life skill.
Yeah.
I mean, I would even say welcome to being human.
Right.
I think a lot of them have, especially if they've only really been in school and they go immediately to college afterwards, they may not have really had something, completely not work for extended periods of time. And it's a little hard. it's a little tough, but that's just part of getting that research experience, is learning how to do this advanced problem solving.
Yeah. Yeah, but when it does work,
Oh yeah,
the high, and then the immediate come down from that is like, oh my gosh, I have to do so much work now that it works. And that's the other thing. I tell students when we're getting closer and closer to succeeding, I'm like, enjoy this time because we're getting closer and closer. Because I'm like, once it succeeds, like it's downhill from there because you're going to be doing so much more work because you're going to figure it out. And I tell them, enjoy the time because you're like, when it starts to work and you're getting closer and closer to hopefully getting that answer, it's exciting. And like, I'm like, you got to cherish that time because it's a small window of like, man, this is working. Like, oh my gosh, like, what can we do? What's next? What's next? And then it's like, oh, I have to run all these like 40 different tedious experiments to make sure that till we can put a paper on.
I mean, that's anything. You get your degree, you get your master's degree, your PhD, you get a grant, you get the success at this job, and then it's like, oh, well, now I have to do more stuff because of it.
Right.
So it's always just something else, which is my to anyone listening, is my natural pessimism coming through. But I think there is some truth in that.
No, there's absolute truth to that because, with these grants and things like that and so much money on the line, it's like I have to be successful in order for this money. Because like now students are relying on me. Master students are relying on me to get this, to make sure the money keeps coming through the door so that they can keep having the experiences that I want them to have and what they want to have. And so there's a lot of pressure to make sure that, everything keeps rolling. But man, that euphoric moment when they were like, yeah, we want to fund you. And like, is amazing. And then the quick is like, oh my gosh, I have to do so much now. Is a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. What are you looking for in students when you're looking at bringing in a student? What are the characteristics you're looking for in them?
That is a good question. I don't know if I've really thought about it to a point where I've pinned it down. I don't want a student who has... I mean, if I had a student who has all A's and they wanted to research with me, that sounds great, but I still need to figure out if they really want to do research or they think they want to do research, right? There's a big difference, and they don't know that themselves until they start. Something else I tell students as well is when they start doing research with me, if they want to stop after a while, that's totally fine. I just don't want a student who wants to do research with me not knowing if they want to continue or thinking that, oh, I'm just going to stop after a semester. That's what I don't want. It's fine to change your mind and have different feelings on it after a while. But I would say a student who really seems like they want to engage with chemistry in a deeper way. And it's fine as well if it really is just for your resume, but there has to be an additional thing. There has to be some additional je ne sais quoi, like some other like hidden quality that I sort of notice in a student, which is usually just it sort of comes down to determination or a desire to be in the lab. It's really hard to pinpoint, but I can usually tell when a student has it and when they don't. It's a little vague, and I'm not really able to really nail down what I'm trying to say here. But I can tell when a student is going to want to do research.
Right.
And I've had students who don't even have like a 3.0 GPA, and they do research with me for 2 years, and they graduate and they get gainful employment. I've had that happen a couple times now. So it doesn't matter to me very much what your grades are. It matters more to me what your motivations are.
Right.
And so I would say that's kind of what it boils down to for me.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you mean by that feeling. Like you can tell when a student's going to work out. Like and a lot of it's on the extremes. Like I can tell, like, oh, this student's going to be really good. I can tell this student is not going to be a good fit. It's the middle ground, I think, where it's a little bit harder, and I think those are the ones that take, I think, a little bit more work if they ultimately want to commit to it. But I think for me, the word is enthusiasm. And it's the right amount of enthusiasm. I think you can have too much, you can have too little. Right? Because, if you have too much, that can get you in trouble. Because then you may do things that you shouldn't. maybe be unsafe, because I've seen students with a lot of enthusiasm for doing chemistry, but then they're so excited to do something they don't think the whole thing through, and then it can get them in trouble and get you in trouble.
Sure. Yeah.
And and then obviously too little enthusiasm, they're not going to want to come in. They're not invested, and that's what you mean by like you want students that have that investment into what you want them to do and what they want to do, and so yeah, I think for me it's enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Whatever that word means to whoever, but but that's going to get them in the door.
Yes.
And that's the key, is like, how do I keep getting them in the door? How do I keep them? I want them to keep showing up, and what quality is going to help them keep showing up?
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Like you said, I don't care if you have a low GPA, a sub 3.0 GPA, or a 4.0 GPA. There's bad research students on every GPA point.
Oh, sure.
So GPA doesn't mean anything to me, but that passion, that enthusiasm will carry you so much farther, and we'll get so much more done together just because of that, minus all the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think another thing for me is that willingness to learn, because you can get students with enthusiasm, but as soon as you start telling them something, they can immediately be like, oh, no, I got it. I know, rather than trying to actually absorb that information.
Right.
If they don't have that open mind, sometimes it can hinder them a lot in the research experience. And so I think those are the two biggest things for me.
Yeah.
Is, willingness to learn and fail and do all these different things and have an open mind. And, just being willing to show up every single day.
Yeah. And that goes back to earlier conversation we were having, is you don't know until you put yourself out there,
Right.
For the students listening, this is just like writing a grant or writing a paper, you have to do uncomfortable things, and you gotta, if you want to do research, just start talking to people.
Right.
And if you're uncomfortable talking to people, like I was when I was in college, you just gotta, it's hard to say just do it, but right. I mean, it gets easier with time.
Yep.
Doing research, having new conversation with people, quote unquote networking, it gets easier with time if you just keep doing it.
Right. Right. You desensitize yourself to and then you learn to understand those nerves and where they're coming from. I think, especially like when you're like public speaking. Like I had a really big problem with public speaking. I would get so nervous, like I was almost like on the verge of tears because I just was so nervous. But you learn to work with those emotions. You learn to understand those fears and where they're coming from. And as you do it more and more, you learn that most people aren't really listening anyway. And to give another plug to Dungeons and Dragons, that helped me the most with public speaking. Yeah. So if you have public speaking problems, just join a D&D group somewhere, and you'll get your public speaking will get a little better once you pretend to be a dragon or whatever, a multi-class barbarian rogue for a couple hours a week. Yeah. It really gets your creativity going, but also gets your public speaking. Yeah. Maybe I should have tried that instead of doing an acting class.
I mean, no, that too. Acting, I would say acting class, theater,
but
D&D,
that was so much more.
Same.
That's so much more horrific. At least with D&D, you're with your friends and stuff like that. I was in an acting class in college with like this is like 4th grade too, and I'm like like pooping myself, like trying to like learn this monologue, and then I had to perform it in front of everyone in the class. And I took the extreme route of I know I need to get over this thing. Yeah. And so I need to put myself in the most uncomfortable situation to try to desensitize myself as much as possible, as quickly as possible.
Yeah, there you go.
My mindset.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would have done it again.
Sure.
But it did help me on a certain level. Like it desensitized me so much so quickly that I was like, nothing is going to be this bad. Like because like at least when I'm giving a talk about chemistry, I at least know what I'm talking about on a certain level. I don't know how Hamlet feels in this moment that I'm trying to portray to these people, So, you can go to the extreme like me, or you can play Dungeons and Dragons, which seems like a much safer
adventure you're playing with, but yeah.
Sure. I think Dungeons and Dragons is a great way to do that. And whatever helps you, whatever path you need to take, I think that's the way you should take it. So try to go off of the research side, because this kind of leads in, I want to get into a little bit of what we learned about teaching this year. Not this year, but these past few years of being a professor. We've taught in grad school and things like that, but I think it's different when you are the professor. When you're the head, all the roads kind of lead to you in the classroom, right? And so, what are some of the biggest, I guess, lessons you've learned through these past few years of being a professor?
Yeah, so I'm approaching I guess I passed it now.
Yeah.
I'm on my 5th year of teaching. So I started in 2020 when I was a postdoc at UNC Asheville, and I started here at Tennessee Tech in 2022. So I had been teaching organic chemistry since early 2020. And I would say up through until now, that's a hard question because I don't know. It sounds bad because I was like, I haven't learned anything. I know I have. I feel like the lessons I've learned have been a little less over the past few years. But if I had to say something about what I've learned, it would probably be that the students who want to do well will always do well. And the students who don't put in the effort are probably never going to put in the effort. It's the students who are in the middle, like the D, C, and B students who could be influenced one way or another. I think the A students are always going to get A's. And the students who don't show up to class, don't study, they're always going to get an F. And it's those middle students I try to reach. Because I had done a lot with, and I can't remember if I had mentioned this on the previous podcast we did or not, but I used to do flipped classroom stuff with doing pre-recorded lectures the students would watch, and then we'd come to class and do basically a lot of problem solving and maybe re-explaining a concept or two. And I found that it really only benefited the top, I would say, 30% of the class. The rest of them just white-knuckled the lectures. They would just not watch the videos, come to class, and hope they could follow along with the problem solving we would do. And I've kind of taken it, and this might sound bad, but just hang with me for a second. When I make new things for my class, like I'm implementing a new policy, I'm trying to do AI integration into certain homeworks I'm doing now to make students realize they can't just rely on AI. It's wrong oftentimes. Or I'm trying to do more quizzes to get students more engaged with the material each week. I have to remember that students don't really care very much, which again sounds bad. Like, I've been a student, I've been there, but I think the last thing a student wants to do is do what they feel like is busy work each week for a class. They don't want to watch a 15-minute video when they have to go to class anyway. And I'm not saying pedagogically it is correct or incorrect to do one thing or another. I'm just saying from my experience, I know students are probably not reading the textbook. They're probably not watching the videos that you may be asking them to read or review the study guides or ask them to review. Some are, but a lot of them are not. So what I try to do now is, in the class, what can I do to reach the students in the middle? To help them, maybe not get a D and get a C, or get a B instead of a C, and influence them in whatever way I can. So usually that means for me, recording my lectures still and uploading them online so they can rewatch it, or if they don't come to class, they can rewatch it later. And there's pros and cons to recording lectures and uploading them, because you can say, students will just not show up. But I found it to be typically pretty valuable. If a student misses a class, they can watch the lecture or rewatch it if they want to. And so now, whenever I make changes in my class, I think, is this going to benefit the middle? Is this going to benefit the students who may not really want to do this extra thing each week when they don't find it valuable? Which again feels a little more esoteric because it's not clear-cut advice. But I would say in general, if you are a faculty who teaches and are implementing a new change, really think, are the students actually going to want to do this? Is this another thing that just feels like busy work? And maybe instead you can think, what can I remove from my class to make room for this? Because you can only fill up so much before students are, on your Rate My Professor page saying, oh, I'm in the library every week for this class. Right. This is not what I want to do. This is not my major.
Yeah.
Why am I putting so much effort into this class? And that's important to consider as a faculty too. If you're having your students do 10 hours of work each week for your class that is not their major, or even if it was their major, I'll leave that up to you. But students have other things they're doing. right? I can say, oh, students are lazy, they don't want to do as much. I don't think that's necessarily true. You can think about what you want about tablets and TikTok and whatever, but I think students have more responsibilities in general. They're doing more on campus things, off campus things. Maybe they're burnt out from the state of the world. You don't really know what it is, but students have other things they're doing, and doing an additional 10 hours of work each week just is not it for them. Right. And that's what I think about when I make changes is this going to benefit the students? What can I remove? What can I do to keep things moving for them? And I guess for me, a change I've done recently is I have more consistent review sessions with my students that I also record. So it's not mandatory. I'm not revealing secrets in the review session, but it's there. It's optional if students want to partake in it.
Yeah, capturing that middle ground of students is always going to be hard. It's always going to be a cat and mouse game of, okay, how can I get their attention? How can I help them? But they have to be willing to help themselves. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the people that aren't going to show up, they're not going to show up. They're going to get the grade that they're going to get. Mm-hmm. People who are on the high end always going to get the A's. They have that mentality. So you get that variance in the middle. Mm-hmm. And for me, I try to focus everything in the classroom. Like we have our homeworks and things like that, but I'm trying to maybe I'm being too mean or whatever. I don't record my lectures. I upload the notes, but if you want the full experience, you have to come to class. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to miss some things if you don't come to class.
Right.
And so in my mind, I'm like, hopefully that encourages students that are in the middle ground to show up, mm-hmm. instead of like, oh, well, I'll have this lecture that I can just watch. Mm-hmm. Because for me, if I were in their shoes, if a professor was recording their lecture and I didn't feel like showing up, I just wouldn't show up, and I'll be like, I'm going to watch the lecture later. Mm-hmm. And you know what I wouldn't do? Watch mm-hmm. that lecture later.
Oh, yeah.
And so and it's a trap that I would mm-hmm. even find myself falling into. Mm-hmm. And so but I do get the point if someone misses a class, things like that. Obviously, if someone misses a class, if they want more help, I'll give them more help. I have multiple study hall hours, open office hours, stuff like that, mm-hmm. Kind of things. So if they want help, they can always get help from me or from TAs and things like that. Yeah. But that's the kind of mindset that I have, I guess, when it comes to like teaching and I think I do miss a little bit of that, if a student needs to make up, and then I do kind of pay for that later, mm-hmm. if students need to pick something up later, but I guess I'm willing to pay that price.
Yeah.
But I think for me, since I'm so focused on like trying to give them that experience in the classroom, my biggest thing that I've learned is it's really hard to get the students engaged. Mm-hmm. It's like pulling teeth. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't tell you how... I probably ask, does anyone have any questions? Mm-hmm. 20 to 30 times. Mm-hmm. A class. Sure. I go over something, and I'm like, are there any questions? And I'll even try to throw things out there, like, is there any questions about this? Any questions about, like, specific things? Mm-hmm. Nothing. Crickets. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll get those the rambunctious students that are sitting in the front that'll mm-hmm. raise their hand and things like that, but... Mm-hmm. But no, everyone's afraid to ask a question. Sure. Because they're worried they're going to sound stupid in front of their friends or mm-hmm. whatever. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, and here's the thing. I would say, we say a lot, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I've definitely had a stupid question in my class before, which I do not say that. Yeah. I think there has been one or two times in my entirety of teaching where maybe my facial expressions have shown that. But what I try to do if a student asks a question that either I clearly answered less than a minute ago, I will use it as a teaching moment to like sort of reiterate it, or right. I'll like take their question and maybe morph it into something a little different to not be as embarrassing for them if it's like a really simple question.
Sure.
So that's what we can do on our end. Just keep saying there's no such thing as a stupid question,
right.
and then gently morph questions into helpful discussions
right.
for the students.
Yeah.
So for any of you out there being afraid to ask a question, ask it. You might think it's a stupid question. The professor might know it's a stupid question, but the class will not when the professor probably will handle it appropriately. And if your professor doesn't and they start belittling you, then make that HR report. But otherwise, I think you are probably fine. And other students in the class may have the exact same quote unquote stupid question.
Right. No,
And,
I guarantee there's students in that class that have the same exact question as you and ask it. You're not only helping yourself, you're helping these other students. You're helping the people around you.
Right.
And I think about this quote now a lot from a previous, I guess, boss or PI, whatever you want to call him, is that college is the only place where the customer wants less for their money. Mm-hmm. And you're getting less for your money if you're not asking those questions that you have. Yeah. I'm here to help you. Mm-hmm. The only way I can help you is if you tell me what you need help with a lot of the times. Yeah. And because I can't read your mind, I can't go over the things that you need. I can't reiterate the things you need me to reiterate because I don't know. There's 120 students sitting in front of me. I can't know exactly what each one of those students needs help with. The only way I know they need help with something is if they mention it. Yeah. And get your money's worth out of it. Yeah. Ask a question. Ask for more information. Get more for your money. Get more out of the experience because you're going to be better off for it. Right. And I would love for students to ask questions. I would love to answer questions in class. That's what I'm begging for when I'm asking these students, are there any questions? And then, but maybe, I have to adjust how I teach too, because sometimes students are like, oh, you're going too fast. But then some students think, well, it's right on pace for me over here. But if I'm going too fast, ask me to reiterate something. I don't know. I can't cater to every single person's learning style, unfortunately. Right. But I can do the best I can. And the only way to help you is if you help me help you in a way. Right. And so I think that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I don't know if I have to, I might try to play around with a message board next semester.
I will say I have done a group me. Okay. For people who are wanting to do something similar, there is, depending on what platform you're using, we're using iLearn, I think, for now. I think that's changing.
It's changing.
Well, anyway, whatever it is, there are probably built-in discussion boards, and there are apps like GroupMe. I guess you could use Discord if you wanted. There's a lot of things out there you could use. GroupMe, I think, is a little more academic friendly, that you can use as a built-in class discussion board where students can ask each other questions and things like that. So I have a GroupMe page I put up every semester for a class, and I will say in my syllabus, I will not engage in the GroupMe unless I'm asked a specific question. So you guys are free to talk amongst yourselves in this discussion board. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. Sometimes students tell me that they use the GroupMe to find the people in the class and then they make their own separate GroupMe page away from my prying eyes. Whatever helps. Right. I'm totally okay with never seeing anything they put, but I want to at least make it known to make an effort to have students connect with each other through some sort of a platform so they can talk to each other, get help from each other, and that is, I think, the best way to do any class, especially in any chemistry sequenced class, is to have a study group or have, you can even call it a discussion group, but people who you can talk to and have them teach you, you teach them. That's what I try to facilitate the most now, more than I would say when I first started teaching, is those discussion elements, because people don't do that naturally. There are some students who will never talk to anybody else in the class, so I try to do goal-setting worksheets a few times during the semester where I try to get out of students, are you talking to other people in class? And then I ask, are you actually doing your own homework, or are you just pulling answers from your group mates and you're not actually learning the material? And that's important too. I'm not trying to get them to snitch or something. I don't if they're working together in groups on homework and they don't know the material, that is up to them. But if I can make them think about what they're doing, some forced self-reflection, right? I hope that is helpful to the students.
Yeah. I hate group chats, so I don't know if I'll do a group me. Yeah. But a way to get students to interact more in classes, I'm switching over to a classroom that has 4-person tables instead of the stadium seating, so that the students or it's easier, because I have a lot of problems in class that I give them time to work on. And so hopefully these 4-person tables will allow them to interact with each other more, so that they can have those discussions and work on those problems together, because it is hard when you have people to the left and right of you trying to, communicate as much as possible, but
Right.
it can be difficult. But if you're all kind of looking at each other, all kind of working on the same surface, maybe hopefully it'll allow them to interact, and hopefully those people that work together, they start interacting more, and they create their own study groups, and I'm trying to break down the barriers as much as I can. And like you said, it's one of the best ways for them to learn is by teaching others and learning in that group dynamic. But yeah, like I'm gonna try an in-class message board next year. I might pilot it a little bit for a couple classes that may be particularly heavy on problem sets, and we'll see where it goes. Again, it's hard with 120 students. Hopefully, I can sift through those questions at while everything is going on. I already have 2 screens in front of me. Adding a 3rd screen in front of me might be a lot, but if it that's why I'm going to pilot it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, we'll go do something else. But yeah, I'm going to try my best to make it, at least break down another barrier of, like, if people don't want to speak out in front of everyone else, maybe they're willing to type it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last thing that I wanted to touch on, how do we feel about tenure so far? Like this tenure process, it's, when you hear about tenure before you're in this position, it seems like this daunting thing, right? That's like, this is make or break for your career in kind of way, that's what it makes it seem like, are you going to be able to be a professor for the rest of your life kind of stuff? If you don't get it, what happens next, right?
Yeah.
And so we're over 3 years in now. Like, how have you felt about this tenure process?
Yeah, so I guess first off, for anyone listening who isn't really familiar, tenure is typically what am I trying to say? Tenure is typically tied with promotion. Oh, there's a tongue twister for you.
Yeah.
So when you go for tenure, you're also getting promoted. So for us, we're both assistant professors. If we get tenure, we will likely also get promotion. They're sort of combined most of the time, so it's very rare to get one without the other. So we'll become associate professors, but also with tenure. So tenure just means it's harder to get rid of us.
Right.
It used to be more of a protective thing. Like if you were doing, like if, for example, I started doing some really heavy petroleum-based research that the oil companies didn't really like very much, I would have protection from the university, is like the basis of it.
Yeah.
So when we go for tenure promotion, we would, again, become associate professor, we have tenure, and we're a little more secure. We should be getting some sort of a pay raise, which is, of course, nice, but we have job security, which is the big thing. And what that means is different for every university. An R1 university is going to have much higher expectations than an R2, than a PUI, but it's all very dependent on the university. Here at Tennessee Tech, we definitely are at a middle ground type university, so our expectations are, I don't want to say they're lower, but they meet where the university is at. Sometimes the expectations are vague, or sometimes they're more strict. I like the more vague expectations because depending on what your field of study is, it's going to give you some wiggle room. So I'm working on publications right now. I would say overall like 4 major projects that I've had like multitudes of students working on. So it's sort of a tandem, these things are in progress type thing. So I should have about a couple publications out this next upcoming year, and I've had a few grants, 2 external, 1 internal. And I've had students graduate who have gone off to get there, or to go to a PhD program or an MD program or get gainful employment. So my feeling on my tenure promotion is pretty good. I think I have a lot of things in place to make a competitive case for myself to secure tenure and promotion at a place like Tennessee Tech. And the hardest thing about it was probably, well, I'm saying that now, maybe I'll feel differently in a year when I start putting everything together, but the hardest part was in the beginning where it felt very daunting. Like I felt like I didn't really know how it was all going to come together. Like if I didn't put in the right amount of effort and I didn't get lucky, I would say, in getting a grant, then maybe I would not be competitive for a tenure and promotion. And that's hard and it's scary because if you go up for tenure promotion, you don't get it. It kind of makes you feel like, well, what was the past 5 years for?
Right.
One of my, I would say, scientific idols, Jennifer Heemstra, she didn't get, and this is public information, I'm not saying anything secret, she did not get, or she had a bad, I would say, department decision on her tenure when she went up. And she moved to a new university after that, where she was kind of granted that tenure and promotion. And she is a really great scientific communicator. She's a really great researcher in the field of chemical biology. She's the chair at WashU right now, and she wrote a book called Lab Work to Leadership, which is a book all about how professors come into these roles for a job they're not trained for. We were not trained in leadership or management, or we may have experience in running grants from our postdoc or grad student days if we were given the opportunity by a professor to help them write something. But it's a lot of things we were not trained for. We have to get on the job experience. And she details a lot of these struggles with tenure and teaching and research, and what do you do when you have students in your group who don't like each other or they're having external conflicts. So she makes this kind of really nice mentorship in a pocketbook type situation where if you want a mentor, go get this book. And it really outlines a lot of these issues. And so when I was starting this process of thinking about tenure and promotion and working towards it, my fear is what happens if I don't get it. And, you can doom theory hypotheticals all you want. But I think the fact remains, if you're putting in the effort and you're putting in the right resources, you should be set for that. And maybe that's what I say to comfort myself, right? Because there are plenty of cases where people don't get tenure and promotion. But I would say that would be cruel and unusual of the place you're working at, where if you've clearly been putting in the effort and you're getting good feedback every year and you have good coworkers who are helping you in that process, then you should be set. But it's a scary thing, right? And there's a lot of things that are sort of out of our control. There are plenty of cases where your universities didn't have the money to give everybody tenure promotion, right? So what do you do then? And I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is opportunities present themselves to those who are prepared. You kind of have to be on the lookout of, do I go somewhere else? Is there depends on your university, is there a policy in place for you to stay here and apply again? Do you want to apply again? And that's scary, and it's ultimately up to you what you want to do. If you want to leave academia, if you want to go somewhere else. I'm not really able to give great advice because I'm not past the threshold yet. I'm talking a lot of hypotheticals. Maybe in a year from now, I'll be in the dredges of despair when, I don't get tenure promotion, right? Or I'm just hating putting together this dossier. Or I feel like maybe I've not done enough to go up. But I think the most you can do is just keep working at it every day and kind of remember why you're doing it. For me, it's the students. I like the mentorship aspect. That's not to say I love teaching or I love research. I like aspects of them both. But I think I really more so like the student mentorship aspect of all of these things. And that's why I'm doing it.
I think the tenure process can be daunting because it's so abstract, especially in the beginning, where it's like so many things you're thinking about the end result of all the things that you need to get together: funding, research, like a research program, publications. For us, since we're R2, also good teaching evaluations, and then at the same time, especially in the early years, getting your teaching style down, putting together classes, having your different preps, right? Trying to do and juggle all of that at once is very daunting because it's so much work, and it's so much work. And but then once you start getting into the throes of it, you kind of get into a rhythm of, okay, like you start to get more organized. You start to figure out, okay, how do I like to do these certain things? You start learning more about yourself, learning about how you like to teach, how you like to mentor, all these things that help you along the road, like help you gain or get to that end goal. But yeah, especially in the beginning, it can be extremely daunting because it's so much. It's such a big picture that you have to put together,
right,
in order to be successful. And like you said, I think the best way to go about it is just if you are truly putting your best foot forward, putting in that effort in the right places, you shouldn't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of strenuous circumstances, like university shutting down or doesn't have funding, whatever. Outside of those extremes, I truly believe if you're putting your best foot forward and you know what you're capable of, you shouldn't have to worry about it. In my opinion, is that you know the job you're going to do, and no one sets out to do a job poorly. At least I would like to think that.
Oh yeah, I mean,
you
sure.
know, at least I would like to think that, right? And we're all good people here, and so listening and talking and stuff like that. But I think that's the thing. It's you got to put forward. It's a ton of effort, but if you're putting your best foot forward, it shouldn't be a concern. Is my opinion, and that's what I'm going with, and that's hopefully that's going to carry me into getting tenure along with you, and hopefully I expect we'll be going up for it at the same time, maybe early, we'll see, and we'll be I don't know. There's no ceremony, I guess, but
I mean, there's ceremony if you want there to be.
Yeah, we'll be high-fiving in the hallway or something once we get it or
but
whatever.
then that goes back to our original conversation of, well, now there's more work.
Right.
Now there's the full professor, right? That's the next promotion.
There's plenty of non-full professors out there.
That's true. But I mean, like that's.
But that's the next step, right? That's the next logical step.
Yeah, maybe that's my problem, because I've never really celebrated anything I've done. I didn't really celebrate my bachelor's degree or my PhD or getting a postdoc or starting this job or my grants. I've never really celebrated anything because it just feels like, well, this is just another ladder rung, right? This is just something I should be doing, right? It's. I'm not saying people should do this and never celebrate anything ever. Like, you should celebrate your victories in whatever way it means something to you. But it does feel often like this is just something that is expected, right? It's not like I suddenly got an email that said, "Oh, we're giving you a surprise $1 million for no reason," right? That would be a truly thing. That would be something to celebrate, right? I did not put in the work and was not expected to get this thing. I feel like everything I've done my entire academic career from college until now has just been, well, this is of course the next thing I have to do. And I think that's certainly a way to lead to intense burnout. But definitely find ways to celebrate what you've accomplished, even if it feels like it's just something that you should have done or should be expected to do.
It's hard to celebrate those things in the moment just because you're so busy. You have, especially right now, you have so much to do. It's like, yes, okay, good. And then you move on because, like you said, it's like, well, I was supposed to get funding. Well, I'm supposed to get publications. Well, I'm supposed to do all these things, right? But I think there is something to be said about enjoying those little things while you can, because maybe it's not always going to be this fruitful. And so I'm trying to get better at celebrating those moments, whether it's, going out to getting a nice dinner with my wife, or, just celebrating with my team that I have, and letting everyone enjoy it as well. I think it's tough. I think we're like bred to always look at, okay, what's next, rather than enjoy what's right in front of us, because that's the nature of science. We're always moving forward. We're always pushing forward. What's the next thing we can figure out? It's often, what have you done for me lately? Not what have you done.
Right.
And that's kind of what science and chemistry is. And so we're kind of bred in that way to always be looking forward, which makes it hard to enjoy the things in the moment.
Right.
And so I think we can all be doing that better.
Sure.
We'll celebrate. When we get tenure, we'll celebrate together.
Yeah, we'll do that high five in the hallway.
Yeah, and then we'll go to our offices, and then I'll see you at full professor. No, we got to celebrate. That's something we'll celebrate for sure. I think the process of becoming a professor, it's full of ups and downs. I think, like you said, we wouldn't be here if we didn't enjoy what we're doing, right? So, I think you're doing a great job on every aspect, getting to that, the next step, which is tenure and promotion, and hopefully I'm doing the same. And I don't think we should worry too much about it, but I think you're doing a great job, and I hope you continue doing a great job. Hopefully we can still be friends and still hang out and all this stuff.
Oh, sure. And hopefully we don't do a follow-up in 2 years where we say,
we were all wrong.
We don't have tenure promotion. What do we do now?
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be a terrible.
It'd be a good podcast, at least.
So maybe when I fail, you succeed.
No,
we can do
that's
a
not gonna
follow-up
happen.
and say, well, now that you have to be a professional D&D player, What's next?
Professional D&D. Yeah, maybe. Hopefully, we don't have to have that conversation, or maybe it'll open a new chapter in our lives that we've been waiting for. So we'll have to see. Well, we'll try to. Hopefully, the glass is half full in that scenario. But well, thank you, Dr. Murphy, for sitting down with me again, and being pretty vulnerable in this conversation, and really talking about what's in the future, what the future holds for you, and things like that. Thanks again for always being a great supporter and always willing to support the podcast as well.
Oh, of course.
Is there anything you want to shout out, or anything you want to say to anybody before we get out of here?
I would say the last thing I would want to shout out, and I did it a little while ago, is this is the first book I've really read in a while, is Jennifer Heemstra's Lab Work to Leadership book that she just came out with this year. It's been very helpful for me, and it's the first time I've pulled out a highlighter and was actually highlighting a book as I was reading it. If it tells you anything about how much it drew me in and how much I gained from that book. So if there's anyone out there who, you don't have to be a teaching or research faculty to enjoy this book, I think it has a lot to give to those who want advice from the perspective of a STEM leader. So I think anyone who can relate to that, whether you're a grad student or you're working in industry or you are a professor, I think there's a lot to be gained from Jennifer Heemstra's book.
Yeah, I'll add it to my research group's book club list. So, well, that'll be definitely next on the list. So I will hopefully be reading it, not this summer, but next summer. And so I'm excited. I'll get the highlighter ready. I've never highlighted a book before, so maybe this will be my first time. Well, thanks again, Dr. Murphy, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you for listening.